a lawyer or an accountant, so I'm not sure.
All right.
Okay.
Welcome to That's Good Thing Podcast. You are number 6, episode number 6, to
Yay!
be on here. We had some great guests before, and you are going to be one in a long line of more great guests. So welcome to the show.
Woohoo!
We here have
right.
Stephanie, who is famous for riding her Vespa GTS. Is that correct? You can introduce yourself.
I guess famous. Yes, I ride a 250 GTS, and I've ridden it across the country a few times. I've ridden it in 49 U.S. states, and I think it's 7 or 9. I lost count of how many Canadian provinces and territories, and I went down to Baja, Mexico. The bike, I think, has about 75,000 miles on it right now.
Wow.
And
75,000 miles?
Yep. I think around after I don't remember the specific mileage now.
A lot.
Yeah, it was maybe
It
was like 6 or 7,000 miles ago. I don't remember. I swapped a new engine in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, because that was going to be my question. Like, how much maintenance does a GTS need at 75,000 miles?
So I think it would have kept running, but the spark plug had been cross-threaded, so it wasn't staying in. And at that point, it's kind of like there was another engine that found its way to me that was also a 250. And so it was kind of like, yeah, I guess until I figure out what to do next, I'm going to learn how to swap an engine.
Yeah, that's, well, if you can find an engine that quick, that's a quick solution, right?
I was pretty lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think it was last year I took it on a few trips up to the Maritimes, out to AMA Vintage Days to speak on a panel about all-women motorcycle trip in Pakistan that I went on a couple of years ago, and just rode it around, put several thousand miles on it.
Yeah, all women's motorcycle trip in where? Afghanistan?
In Pakistan.
Okay.
Yeah. Super interesting trip.
I want to come back to that. I'm writing notes.
Yeah.
So we have this reoccurring segment on the show where we talk about what we're writing, what we're working on right now. I'm going to steal this from you because I've been working on building the engine for the AmeriVespa raffle bike, and I just came back from Lake Geneva last weekend where we put it in, and we did all new wiring harness until 3 in the morning, and I had to leave at like 8 in the morning again. It was a really stressful, to the point that I didn't film anything. I have like some short camera clips, but I was so immersed in work that I just have a few clips of us wiring that thing. But I do have, I just have a video out of putting the engine, building the engine at Saint Cycle Works with Joe Casola. We did some welding on it and all that stuff, and then next week there'll be one where it's going to be put together finally, and it'll be running. So if anyone is watching, this is me where I hawk my stuff out. Go watch my shit. What are you writing? What are you working on right now?
So I have my Vespa GTS250, and that's like so far running pretty well. I think there might be an air leak, but otherwise it is still like it's running. I have a PX200, which is a Frankenbike. It was totaled in Atlanta. I was hit by a car, and then put back together with whatever I had. So it has like T5 parts, and it's I don't know. It's just all over, but it runs, except now it's making a funny sound in third gear, so I need to tear that apart. And I have 2 BMWs. I have a 2009 BMW Cross Country, and that one is a really fun bike, but has the tiniest gas tank in the world. And I just picked up a 1983 R65, and that actually does run pretty well, but the throttle is currently disassembled for just for a lubrication inspection. It's kind of sticky. I'm figuring it out. So it's running. It's just not together. a little.
I did. So first of all, I didn't know they sold
Hmm.
the cross country here in the U.S. because you barely see that line of BMWs, the 650 that they had.
Yeah. And I specifically was hunting it down because I saw one in San Francisco, and I think that series they only made them for 3 years, and they made three versions of it: the like cross challenge, cross moto, and cross country. But it was I think it was the last year they made them, 2009. They actually dropped the seat height like another inch or so. So this was an enduro style bike that I could ride without modification. Like I could ride this comfortably, and it weighs less than my GTS. This bike is like all titanium and feathers. I don't know.
Do you take it off road?
But
Do you do
it's
the whole adventure thing?
uh, I've taken it off road in Canada for there's an HU meetup, and they have like a mini hum. And I've never done anything like that before, so I figured I would try it with a bike that was actually meant to do this. The bike it performs really well and just makes me feel like a loser because I don't really know how to. Like that's the first time I rode in deep sand. It was kind of wild.
Well, you can't get hurt that bad when you fall over in sand.
Yeah,
I
yeah, and it's like pretty slow speed.
I got a KTM a 530 because I
Hmm.
always I had a BMW GS back home in Europe, and it was like the best bike you
Hmm.
can ever imagine. But it was also the most boring thing ever because you can't nothing goes wrong, right? You just sit in it. It's like driving a
Yeah,
Mercedes. You have seat massagers and everything almost, and nothing can go wrong. So
yeah.
I always wanted to go on an adventure, like start taking these things off road, but I have no off road experience whatsoever. So I recently had the chance to pick up a KTM 530. I picked up that KTM, and I was like, full off road gear, let's go. Asked someone for a trail
Nice.
next close by, and it was a disaster. I ended I landed in like a little pond with my bike half on the water. I couldn't get out.
It's
I actually had to call my wife to come pick me up and bring straps,
oh,
and we
you
had
went
to pull me out.
solo.
Yeah, I went solo. It was a really
Oh
stupid
man.
idea. Yep. So
But it's an adventure.
yeah, I gave up on that thing. It's a supermoto now.
Oh. It's funny. So, like, I actually meant to, when I signed up for this Pakistan trip, they had mentioned it's like you should have some off road experience. And I'm like, great, there's a course that's nearby. I looked it up already. But that summer, I fell in Alaska. I wiped out in Alaska and broke my clavicle. So, I didn't have time to take this course. It was like when we left for Pakistan, I was like just healed enough to ride with some confidence. So we arrived in, I think it was Lahore, and then like we rode out into the mountains. And I don't know if this was the second or third day. The group is like, "Hey, we saw this really fun-looking trail. It goes up the mountainside like this, and it is just like a little dirt, like." Um, so we tore off in that direction, and I was freaking out. We were riding local bikes. They're local Honda CB150Fs, I think it was. Um, so little four-stroke 150s, light bikes, fun bikes. But when we got to the top of that little trail, I had to ask Liza to teach me how to ride off-road. And she did. And we went up and down a few times, and proceeded to ride the rest of Pakistan, and I was much more comfortable after that. It was very much like a trial by fire. It's like, sure, just like toss you in the deep end, we'll figure it out. But after that, it's given me a lot more confidence to like. I rode in Thailand this past winter, Thailand and Vietnam, and it's quite different. I think if I had been thrown in that situation 5 years ago, before taking off on my Vespa for so many miles, before going to Pakistan, before riding in other nations, whatever, I would have been much more apprehensive. But now it's now it's really fun.
So was it this? I put a picture up. Was it this street bike that you guys rode?
Yes, it was. It wasn't even meant for trails, and we took it on like Deosai plains. It's
I think it's
hilarious.
cool. Like stuff like
It
this,
was
the
fun.
125s, well, not really 150s,
Mm-hmm.
125s is what Europe now is basically riding, all of Europe. When I grew up, it
Mm-hmm.
was all 50s, so we had these like basically 50cc two-stroke motorcycles, and we'd go anywhere with them. Like 300-kilometer trips during a day. My parents would text me, "Where are
Yeah.
you?" I'm coming home. I'm lost. No GPS, no nothing.
Right.
I miss those times.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I was on an XR 150 in Vietnam, and that was a fun bike. Like we did some mountain passes on that. That was really fun.
The Honda XR. Oh yeah, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it can handle a lot of terrain, and it's comfortable and light. And anyway, I was pleased. I hadn't ridden one before. I mean, I would take my P too. Like it's at this. I think since coming back, it was very like, yeah, I just take the P everywhere too. That would be a fun
Yeah,
off
I
road.
I did I did take I did a trip. I think it's episode 15 on my channel.
Mm-hmm.
I just put in a new disc on the front of my P, and I called a buddy
Mm.
and was like, "Hey, there's another trail, but this time I don't want to go alone." This was just after I had that debacle with the KTM. He's like, "But I don't have a
Yep.
bike." I'm like, "Just ride my P." And we took and
Yeah.
it was some bad single track. Like it was steep uphill and downhill. At some point, we rode next to the train tracks and like the thick rocks. And the bike
Yeah.
went everywhere. It was great. It was great. It was that gray P you saw at the Whiskey Dick rally.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. That thing that was before
Yeah, I think.
modification, but that thing went everywhere. And I really am toying with this idea of building an enduro, not an enduro. A dual sport P series. That would be so much fun. Either P series
That would
or
be
a Stella
wild.
or something. Just cut it a little bit, put some extra
Yeah.
stuff on it, and it'll be fine.
Cut it
Yeah.
down. Put the support
Yeah.
bar in the
Yep.
middle. I guess I have ridden a P like around like logging trails in the forest. I think just many years ago in Richmond. I went to Dogwood, and I think it was Scotty brought his. I think it was a Baja P.
Mm.
It's something that's got that reinforcing bar and like nothing, like all the metal's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I immediately like rode it into a log and stalled it. And thankfully, it was like in the forest though, so nobody saw. But then, like once I started again, I like went through a river and then like crashed in a bunch of pricker bushes. And thankfully, no one saw that either. But I did come back, and I was very wet and all scratched up. So
That's basically the
I'm
the,
glad I.
the the mantra of that scooter thing. Fail gracefully.
Yes, fail gracefully or fail where people can't see you.
Yeah, that's why I edit my videos. Let's talk about your all women's trip to Pakistan. That just sounds so fantastic. I am planning. I'm gonna throw this out here. I am planning a podcast with because there's a bunch of women's riders here in Cincinnati. Hold on, let me plug their blog real quick. Now I feel like I'm shameful because I don't know it. It is 3women1motorcycleblog.com. There we go.
Nice.
There. 3women1motorcycleblog. Well, it's Jamie and Mel and I don't know the third person. Shannon. Hi Shannon. Sorry. And I wanted to have them on talking about women and riding, and what you just told me. Why did you decide to do a full women's trip in a country like Pakistan? Why? First of all, let's start with Pakistan and not why women, but
Okay.
Why Pakistan?
So the trip was organized by Liza, who had been to Pakistan, I think 2 years prior, and she met Moin, the guide, because Moin was on her podcast, Motorcycles and Misfits, and put together a trip. I think there was I'm going to get this wrong, but I think it was like a mixed group. And she came back having had an amazing experience, but feeling like she only saw half of Pakistan because of how segregated spaces can be. So naturally, the next move is to make an all-female trip. And I was on her podcast, I think this would have been 2016, 2017. I was passing through San Francisco. And they're based in Santa Cruz. And so she had mentioned this Pakistan trip to me. And that was kind of it. I had never considered it before, but everything I heard about it was it's really amazing. I think, have you heard of the Wandering Wasp, Juvina?
No, I feel like I've heard this.
She rode her Vespa. I don't remember exactly. It's a P series. Rode it from Singapore to Europe. I went through 22 countries, and on the way, I think she said she spent a month in Pakistan, and it looked incredible, and her experience sounded incredible, and I didn't want to listen to all the fear mongering, so I signed up for this trip.
I'm looking at the pictures right now. I mean, that bike looks so good. It looks like it has been through some stuff.
Oh man, yeah. I think it's sitting in the window of a Vespa shop in like Croatia, I want to say. I'm totally gonna. Yeah, it's somewhere over there, and it's waiting for her to come back and pick it up. But she is also someone who just like had an incredible ride.
Wait, where did my pen go?
And I got to meet her in Singapore, maybe last year. I'm really bad at telling time, if you can't tell.
My screens just went out. Crap. If you spend winters and you don't get to see any snow, you spend winters on the other side of the planet. Of course, like you have a hard time telling.
Yeah,
what it is.
It is. I think even when I was like actively covering more ground and like living on my bike full time, it was very much like, because you keep riding where it's warm, so you kind of just you ride through climates and you don't experience seasons. Or I mean, like it's just one unending, unfolding change of scenery, and I guess it's mostly just change of climate. So yeah, it wasn't the concussions. It's just that I'm bad at this. Yeah, Pakistan. It's beautiful, beautiful place. Really great adventure riding there. And just stunning scenery, the kindest people. It's just like hospitality is above and beyond. Like I can't even buy gifts. It's like, no, you just take them. It's very, and everyone is always very curious and kind, and
yeah, I had
a lot of places.
I had Mark, who's on twice already. He's the guy who rode around the world in 80 days on the Vespa.
Yep.
And I see that what you did was probably way different. And well, first of all, you weren't on the Vespa, but the way you discover a country compared to what he did and the way he explained his experience was he was just trying to zip through as quick as possible because he was on a schedule, right?
Yeah.
So you can sit down and take a breather and take everything in.
Yeah. Although that Pakistan trip was, I think it was only 2 weeks. So for me, that was like, we were riding a lot. I was exhausted afterwards. And I think if when I'm riding, like if I'm taking my GTS around, there's much less direction. It's much pokier and kind of, I mean, yeah, this Vespa has been mostly based in Boston for a couple years now, and it's just take it to Ohio, take it to Cape Breton, just kind of poke around whenever you can.
So what was your biggest trip on that thing?
I guess it would be in 2014 when I packed up my life and left Rhode Island. And I intended to ride to the four corners of the contiguous U.S. So it was Key West, Angle Inlet, Nia Bay, and Lubec, Maine. And I was also just like, I was done living in Rhode Island, so I sold everything, put the rest of it in storage, and just like took off and was kind of like shopping for a new home, I guess. And I think I went to the first 3 corners in 3 months, and then took 11 months to get to Lubeck via Mexico.
That would be, what corner would that be? Like,
Lubeck is the easternmost point. Mexico is not really,
okay.
yeah, on was not part of the plan, but I heard it was really beautiful, and it was like February or something. And so it seems like a nice time to go to Baja.
Yeah.
To take my Vespa down to Baja. Yep. That was fun. That was amazing, actually. I'd really like to go back. I might take a different bike, but it was good on the Vespa too.
How did you choose your roads? Right, so you can go the fastest way possible. Did you use highways? Did you use back roads? Back roads can be boring too, which I recently learned. How did you choose your roads?
I mostly take back roads. If I know where I want to go that day, so I have like point A, point B, I will usually pick the road that looks the twistiest between them. I mean, I know this is not really an option in some places like South Dakota or like I think Minnesota, Texas. Sometimes Texas took me like 3 days to ride across. It was just, and it looked like like the animation. In animation, you have the looped background.
Yeah,
there's a lot of Texas stuff. It just looked like that. But yeah, it just depends. So if it is just like wide open flat land, sometimes if you take the secondary roads, there are no services, so you can't find gas. So, and in those cases, I will just take like I-90 straight across, whatever it is, the highway. I prefer to take secondary roads. I think it was in Missouri. I took a lot of little back roads that sometimes turned into dirt and sometimes had some water crossings. It had rained a lot recently, so there's a lot of high water. So it just depends. I don't know if that's a satisfying answer.
No.
It depends.
Because it's weird sometimes to pick your roads, right? Like we live...
It is.
I want to say 35, 40 minutes outside of downtown Cincinnati. So, and whenever there's something going on, let's ride down, but what road do we take, right? I don't want to take the highway. I don't want to take the plain old, like, straight state route. There's always got to be a different option. But when you do that, and this is from here to Cincinnati, right? I can't imagine what it means to do that, going from, Boston to California. I don't know my geography very well. From one side of the country to the other. So,
right. But it is kind of great because you can pick a different, I mean, obviously you could pick a different every single time. I've been coast to coast 3 times now on my Vespa. And all 3 times has been radically different. All 3 of the ways across. So it's kind of cool that way. Versus like, so I lived in New England for 7 years before I took off. And I am so sick of Route 1 and 95 because those are kind of the only ways to get up and down the coast. It's like you take 95 and it blows. And through Connecticut, it's always traffic. You take 1 and it's like, okay, this is the secondary road, but it also is just so boring. At least a lot of it is.
What I found as a European coming here is I miss road signs. You know, every intersection you have a sign that says, "Hey, this is the road you take to this town, and this is the road you take to that town." But here, when like an example, we have Hamilton-Dayton Road. I had to learn that is the road that connects Hamilton and Dayton. I just thought that was a street name, right? Just a plain old street name. But I guess that road takes you left side, you go to Hamilton, the other side, you go to Dayton. There are no...
And that does make sense.
Now it does.
I think that's pretty common in Ohio and maybe a couple other states. And it's not quite as common all over America. I don't know if that's been your experience.
The only other place I got lost at was in Richmond last year. And we found our way down. But, yeah. What?
Richmond has some nice riding.
Yeah, we did this, right? Were you at AmeriVespa last year? That's your corner.
Not
Okay.
last year, no.
Um, we did this ride. It was like, let's go out to a historical site, and sure, we just hooked up with this ride because they have many rides during the day, and it was a big bike ride, right? So it was like GTSs and big scooters, and then it was us with three old vintage bikes, with the only vintage bikes in the ride, which was already a big like uh-oh. And it turned out it was half an hour straight of 55 road with a bunch of red lights in between. And on the way back, I told my wife and my buddy who was with us, I was like, nope, we're not going there. We're taking the first intersection. We're going right, and then we'll just find our way back that way, because I'm not doing that again. And I think we were lucky because my buddy rode a Bajaj, like a 2-port Bajaj, and he like barely made it up there at 55. That thing was a trooper. And yeah, I don't think it would have survived on the way back. What have you like? This is a very cheesy question, right? But what have you learned about the U.S. riding through the U.S.?
It is incredibly diverse, and the geography is also diverse. But it also it can, I think it can really divide people. But it is, I mean, it's mostly, it's a beautiful country, and people are always kind to travelers. 99% of people are good and kind, especially to travelers. But it is a little, it's hard. It's amazing that America is one country. Because it could easily be so many. And sometimes it feels like it is.
Where do you see the divides? Okay, I don't want to get political. I just, like, in terms of geography, where do you see the divide? Where does America start to be different than the one you know from, for example, where you live now?
I mean, there's like a north and south divide. I don't know if there's a specific line for it, but you do get to watch the landscape change, and you do kind of watch. I don't know if it's fair to say people change. You see a lot more churches as you go farther south, I feel, or it's just different churches. When you cross the Mississippi, I feel like a lot of that might be a dividing line for a lot of Americans. You tend to stay on one side of the Mississippi, but then as you go further west, things open up. The desert is something I didn't know how I would react to, and I really, really love it. I met some amazing people in New Mexico. And New Mexico, Arizona, all of that Southwest is unreal to ride through, and it is some of my favorite riding in the United States. And California is basically its own nation. I don't want to proselytize too much of I don't know. This is Steph's version of America, but it is. I think it is very surprising that the U.S. is one nation. Because they are so divided. Like, lifestyles can look so radically different depending on where you are in the United States. I
have the feeling
in
Ohio is like, this is where life just keeps on going, right? There's nothing exciting happening. It's just there. You're here and you do your thing. But then you look at Utah, and everything is just gorgeous there. Or you look at Colorado, and people live in like postcard environments. Or California, we have the best beaches and the most And then in New York, you have just skyscrapers, everything. And then you have Ohio, and there's nothing going on.
It's just it's just incredibly diverse. And it's funny. I've joked that it's like before because I'm American. I was born here, but I didn't grow up in the U.S. I grew up in Beijing and Hong Kong. So I came back for college, and I didn't really have a very good understanding of the nation that I'm from, which is partly why I picked like, oh, I'll ride around the U.S. for my first big trip. It's first of all, it's like a classic thing to do is road trip around the U.S. But second, it's like this is technically my nation, but I don't really know anything about it. I think at the time I would have been able to, on a map of the U.S., I can point out Florida because that's pretty obvious, California, New York because that's where I went to school, and Georgia because that's where I was. That's where I spent my childhood until like third grade. And everything in the middle is just like question marks. So yeah, then I set off to ride across the U.S. Rode through 49 U.S. states, and now I think I've seen more of America than most Americans.
Probably, yeah. Do you? Why did you choose to ride on a Vespa? Was there any other bikes you considered at the time?
I had two other bikes. I had a Buddy 50, which was my first bike, and I had a 1983 Kawasaki 550. The Kawasaki was just really heavy. It was a good bike, like just beefy little bike, and I wish I still had it because it would be a lot of fun to chop and to customize. And I got it for $100, so it's kind of awesome. But I think it was the Vespa that was the most comfortable. It was just for ergonomics. It was like nice, big, wide seats, pretty upright riding position. It's like being seated at a dining table and then touring the country. So it's really comfortable. Tons of storage. Strap things to the floorboard. Strap things to like things go under the seat. I put a top case on it, which I later sold and replaced with a Pelican case. Put things in there, strap things on top of that, passenger seat, just like I can carry my life on my Vespa. And there's too much stuff.
Case. Yes, I get it. So I had this talk the other day with someone about vintage versus automatic. You know that real old discussion. What's better, vintage and or automatic? Because I might be interested in doing the Cannonball next year, and so there's this big talk about why would you pick a vintage? And I feel like when you are on the back roads, right? Like I mean, Ohio's full of back roads, and you end up doing 50, 55 all day. There's no difference between riding that and an automatic because you just keep staying in fourth gear. Right, when you have a 10-mile stretch of back road, it's not that different. Aside from you looking at your temperature gauge and being scared that the engine blows up every 2 minutes. But if you can manage that, you'll be fine. So would you, reliability aside, would you do the same thing on your P200?
Yeah, I mean, like that was why I picked it up, was because I was hoping to have another option. And I also just, I mean, the P200 is such a fun bike. Like every time I take it out, because four bikes is a little ridiculous for me to have. I know that there are people with a much bigger scooter problem.
Oh yeah, you should
but
see my garage,
for me, for me, four bikes is like I have too many mouths to feed. I can't take care of all of you. But I don't want to sell any of them because they're all so different. And then every time I go out, like go and sit on one and take it out, it's just like, oh, I can't give this up. And the P200 especially is just like, it's fun, it's comfortable, it's light. Mine has oil injection, so it's like even easier. And the oil injection works. So I'm not too worried about blowing it up yet, I hope. Except for that funny sound in third.
Yeah, I don't believe in the church of oil injection.
I think I just in terms of riding experience, I like both. I just don't. I'm too lazy to like carry all this extra oil.
No, yeah.
And yeah, I would tour. I've taken the P200 on a few long rides. I'm trying to remember the last one. I think I took it to the Gettysburg Rally. And it's great because it fits on the back of the truck. with and you can get 2 bikes on there. With the big, like the wide GTS, it doesn't fit so well. But yeah, vintage versus modern. Depends on what you want to ride.
How?
I
No, go ahead. Finish. Sorry.
No, I would tour on both.
How do you keep yourself sorry, I'm trying to rephrase the question. So I have a hard time, right? I have that scooter thing going on, and I try to document as much as I can. And I see your blog, and you do a good job of telling your story. And I have a hard time keeping up because once I start having fun, I don't take pictures.
Yeah.
Right, so all the rallies that I usually go to that are amazing, I never take pictures. Like Bandcamp, sorry, the rally that we don't speak of is like a picture maybe a year, and that's usually when we unload. You take a picture of your bikes, and then like 4 days go by, and nothing, like my phone hasn't even been touched.
Yeah, and I think it changes your experience when you want to document it, because now it is kind of like you are taking your phone out or your camera to deliberately produce something afterwards, either for yourself or for other people, and it changes the experience to some degree. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just a different thing. And much more recently, I'm finding, I don't know if this is because it's like, oh, this is now, my 4th or 5th time back at this particular rally. I take my phone out a lot less because I really, really prefer to be in the moment. Like, I just want to be there and see my friends and ride around and have an awesome time. And like, sometimes it's also like the photos are kind of boring. It's like at a Whiskey Dick, it's like, oh, you've got a photo of the hot tub that is now covered in foam. I mean, it's not even scooters in that.
Did you do?
I don't know.
Any of the rides there? I forgot because I went.
Yes, we went on the short ride.
I did the long ride, and it was a bit.
You did the long ride? I heard it was really long.
It was really long, and it was really hungover. It's like 20 minutes in the ride. You like ask yourself, "What are you doing here?" But no, the ride was super fun, but it was I had a hard time staying focused.
Actually, I really liked the short ride. I think someone afterwards asked me, it was someone asked, like, God, were those the shittiest roads you ever saw or what? And I was actually thrilled. We took little windy roads. We, got lost because we didn't take the same road that was printed on the map. But whatever, they were all beautiful. And there's like, some water and like there's sand and potholes. So you're like dodging and weaving through the woods, and then sometimes it would open up to a plain, and beautiful day. It's the first day I was wearing a t-shirt outdoors. It was sunny. It was beautiful. So I got to the lunch destination and was like, that was an amazing ride. That was like, a little challenging, had some gravel, had some things you needed to watch out for, but nice scenery, easy pace. And apparently other people didn't share that opinion because they were a little rough. It's spring and the roads hadn't been maintained yet, and there was definitely some water. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, that
it was like a nice spring shakedown ride.
Have to wash your umbrellas again, right? No, I enjoyed the roads, but damn, like the first night, that's when we did that short ride down to the pub together. I remember I changed my headlight just for the fact that it rattled apart on my last rally, my last ride last year. It wasn't even a rally; it was just a road. And I changed it, like put a new $18 bulb in there, like the original P200 US bulb. And we take it out on the first ride, and it's just potholes that are this deep. And I'm like, oh my god, please stay in one piece. Yeah,
I had a friend who lost her headlight. The rim fell off. Immediately, she'd just bought it too. I think it got run over afterwards. It's not. I think she has an unlucky bike. Everything has been full of gremlins.
So what's next for you? And we talked about this in the pre-show. Why don't you share what are you planning to do?
Yeah. So this fall, I am hoping to ship my GTS to Europe. And I know that sounds counterintuitive because that is where the bike is from. But I looked at buying locally. I've wanted to ride around Europe for a while, just because the U.S. is so expansive. It's just the distances are massive, and the thought of riding around Europe is like, that sounds nice. You can just go little distances, and everything is a little more compact. But there are many other reasons. But I looked at buying locally versus shipping, and it actually might be more affordable for me to fly my bike over. And I work remote, so I'll be going really, really slowly. Every time I tell someone, hey, I'm thinking of riding, I'm going to ship my bike and ride around Europe. And they're like, oh, are you going to go to Scandinavia? Are you going to, I know people in Prague, and I'm like, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, yeah, so I'm working at the same time. So I will be riding in 2 nations for a couple months. And just kind of base myself in one place so I can set up my studio and actually hand things in, and then use the opportunity to like take 2 or 3 day trips to explore whatever is local. Maybe every like few weeks. We're talking like 2 to 6 weeks, move to the next place.
Why did you pick Spain and Portugal?
There just happened to be a direct flight to Barcelona. It was just easy. Also, I mean, like I love Spanish and Portuguese food and wine.
Yeah.
And they're kind of affordable, so I hear. And I heard the coast of Portugal is beautiful. I have a few friends who will be there, so I can go say hi to them. And I heard Lisbon has some resources for remote workers, so I'm hoping to find maybe a community. If not, then I'll just shut myself in to my Airbnb or homestay, and and just be really sad and working on my work, unless I'm out riding.
Yeah, I mean, if you start off in Barcelona, will your bike be shipped to Barcelona?
Yes, yeah, that's the plan. I am actually planning to dial that in this weekend. I was gonna pick the dates and start booking things. So this is still a little amorphous, but I've done all the research that I think I need to do. So now it's just a matter of picking the days and putting down the money.
Yeah, that's the big one, right? If you, if you need any help, I'm a European resource, I guess.
Yeah, I would appreciate it. Oh yes, that's true.
And
pick your brain.
If you need wine and food, you gotta. Well, first of all, Barcelona is not part of Spain, depending on who you ask.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not technically starting in Spain.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that far from south of France. Like, you should hop across.
Mm-hmm.
The French are crazy nice, and the food is that region of France is so unknown. That little nook that connects France and Spain is so unknown, but so pretty. I kind of grew up there because that's where the family vacation would go all the time. Well, all the time, every so often, but that's the first place. Well, after visiting family and friends, that's the first place I want to go back to when we make the trip again, because it is pretty awesome roads and amazing food and wine, and you can go. It's my favorite thing. You can go into a winery or a wine reseller with like a jug, and they like give you table wine.
I've heard of this.
Give you table wine, right?
Yeah.
They just fill it up for you. I mean,
and you just fill it.
It's a special wine jug. They have a certain color, but yeah, you just fill it up, and it's like $5 a liter.
I can't wait. Like, I know, I think I have about 2 months budgeted for this before I need to come back to Boston, pack up again, and then I fly home to Hong Kong. So I have about 2 months, and I already know that will be too short for that region, for Barcelona, Madrid, Lisbon, and then maybe up the coast a bit.
Do you know any Spanish, Portuguese?
Very, very little Spanish.
The way for
So
Americans
yes, I'm gonna
to
learn. I
communicate
took like
in Europe is you just speak very slowly
mm-hmm,
and very loudly. Like if someone
mm-hmm.
doesn't understand English for some reason, Americans always decide to speak the same thing, just slower and
But slower and
louder. Yeah.
louder. I feel like I got a dose of this when I was in like Vietnam too, where it's like people will just speak, or Japan also. It's like, no, I don't speak any. I'm so sorry. I can't speak any of this, and it doesn't actually help for you to speak it slower. But yeah, I think so. I really want to store my bike in Lisbon after the 2 months so that I can come back. Because I know, again, it will be too short. And I don't know. I think I'm just gonna be starting another list of places that I want to go back to. I mean, there's already a huge list for North America,
Oh.
like places I would readily go back and ride.
Name one. Like, what's the
And
one with like
Southeast.
in a heartbeat you would go back to?
The coast of California it's so easy to like. It's just beautiful. Even when it's cold and wet and rainy, it's kind of beautiful,
Yeah.
and foggy. I mean, I love the Southwest, so anywhere around New Mexico and Nevada would be like all of that region. Um, I didn't get a chance to ride around Utah very much. I always found myself out of season, and it's pretty hard if you're camping on your motorbike and you're out of season to ride around
Does it
Utah.
get cold there?
Yes, at night it's miserably cold.
See, that's how much I know about you. I mean, I know the geography, right? But I don't know what it is to be in that environment. It's just weird because we've been living in the U.S. now for a bunch of years, and everything is so accessible, but you never get the time to get in the car on the bike and
Yeah.
ride or drive out to Utah. We done Colorado. Colorado is the one place that I enjoyed, and I think that was the border to where you felt like you were actually stepping into a desert. You know, and all of a sudden plants grow out of sand. You're like, wait, this is like the beach. But you're like in the middle of a continent. And it's
Yeah.
such a weird realization for someone who's just, I lived in continental Europe. It's been
Yeah.
just lakes and forests.
I think I had an English friend who came to the U.S. and I think got as far as Pennsylvania and was like, "So where does the desert begin?" And it's like, "Oh, it's you got to keep going. You've got a ways to
Yeah.
go. It doesn't begin in Pennsylvania, unless you mean a cultural desert, and then that's debatable. I don't know."
I had friends come over and they were like all excited. Yeah, let's visit Lee in the U.S. And then they went to Miami, Florida afterwards because it was so boring here in Ohio.
Oh. Actually, yeah, I think it was last year I rode around with my friend Anita, who we met in Pakistan on the all-woman motorcycle trip. And she came over and she borrowed a GTS, borrowed my boyfriend's black GTS, and we rode to AMA Vintage Days in Ohio. And also, like, she was pretty excited. She's Dutch and currently working in Germany. And was excited to ride around the U.S. But I think she had initially been like, "So how far can we go to Florida? I think I have friends in Miami." And I hope I didn't shoot that idea down too hard, just because Miami is so. It was July. It's like you definitely don't want to ride south. It is far too hot, and Miami is forever away. Totally possible. Can be really nice ride. We're going to be spending all the entire trip just putting away miles. So we ended up going to Ohio and then up through Canada a bit. And I took her to a couple scooter rallies. And you said, oof.
Well, yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
is that a bad thing?
No. I really want to get some European scooterists to come to U.S. scooter rallies. I honestly I don't know what European rallies are like because I come from like the 50s scene in Europe, which was a lot more dick measuring. I think that's a good description of look what I have. Your stuff is garbage. and then you come to the US where there's a little bit less about the bikes, but more about the fun you can have.
Yeah, I think it is very much a scene thing.
I really enjoy all the rallies, every single one we've been
Yeah.
to, and it doesn't matter if it's vintage or automatic or whatever. Like Vespa has been great. Register for Vespa 2019, by the way. I'm stoked. I'm stoked to go back there. The rally in the middle of nowhere is great. The one we don't talk about is like the best thing that ever happens every year. So.
Yeah, I really enjoy the rally scene. I think when I set off in 2014, a lot of times it's just, I don't know, I don't really have a direction. But at one rally, I'll hear about some other rally.
Yeah.
And I'll just be like, yeah, sure, I'll make my way over there eventually.
I'm trying to get the guys from Maine to come to Bandcamp this year. They have like a 12-hour drive to do that. I mean, Maine is like the most remote place in the US. That was one of your four corners, right?
Yep, yeah. It's a lot of logging. But it is beautiful.
So, have you done the Cannonball?
I have not. I considered doing the Cannonball as my first, they go coast to coast. That's a great way to go across the country. And it is, but it would be such a different trip. So I'm kind of glad. I think I eventually backed out because I looked at all the parts that I would wear through just riding for 12 days straight, and decided I would like to wear through my parts a little more slowly. But I have friends who really enjoyed doing the Cannonball. I've done several of them. Have you ridden a Cannonball?
No.
Wait, you have?
I started talks with someone where we are planning to possibly do it.
It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
So I hear.
Yeah, and I want to do, so the idea is to do it on a really old bike, but with a 200 engine, but I really want to do something silly, but yet so simple, like drum brake can never, the less stuff you have on it, the less can go bad.
Yeah.
So we'll see how old we can go, how much money we can raise. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Until then, and it's still in baby shoes. But I'm not the. You've seen me. I'm not the person that usually should fit on a bike and ride for a week straight. I don't know how long the Cannonball goes, but for a long time, I'm not the person that should do that. So I think I should start getting my back ready for it. Do you have any tips for someone who wants to ride far? Like, what's the one thing that let's say top 3. Put your top 3 in there. Okay. How to make your ride more comfortable?
I would invest in a good seat if that's an option. I actually find the modern stock P2 or the P seat quite comfortable. The one that it's foam.
The Stella has them kind of too. Yeah.
Yeah, the Stella one is kind of harder, but the P one, for some reason, the P bench stock seat is really comfortable for me. And then once you have a comfortable seat, you just add to it. So in the summer, you can buy these cheap mesh things. It allows for airflow and it makes it a little cushy. And those have been pretty nice. I really like sheepskin. Because again, it's comfortable when it's cold, it's comfortable when it's hot because it keeps the sun off your seat. It still allows some airflow, and because I camp when I go, I usually take the sheepskin off and I stuff it in my pillow so that I have this is another one. So I like sheepskin, if you can't tell.
Do you use it has to be real sheepskin, right? It can't be the fake IKEA stuff.
I don't know how well the fake IKEA stuff works. But the real one, it's quite breathable and it's soft and it's got a little bit of a loft to it. So I don't think I have the one that was given to me for my seat. You can buy ones that have a little strap so that you can strap it to your seat. Yeah. So I really like that. I think that one is on my cross country actually, because the cross country has the most uncomfortable seat I've ever stuck my butt on. It's like it's 20 minutes in and I need to get off
I
this
want
bike. So yeah,
yeah,
your seat.
I want a sheepskin
Really
for the
important.
KTM because I can't sit longer than half an hour on that thing. Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Yeah. Yeah, so a really comfortable seat. Some people like the Airhawk. I wasn't able to dial it in, like that weird floaty sitting on air feeling was not working
Airhawk
for
seat.
me.
I'm
I have
gonna
a
Google
friend.
what that is.
I
Oh,
think
it's those floaty
yeah.
pads. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, with the and then you inflate it to a comfortable degree. I have a friend who, on his GTS, which is already quite a wide saddle and a long saddle, so this is a comfortable seat. He has an Airhawk and a sheepskin over it, and when you sit on it, it's like sitting on a cloud. It's a little weird because I actually like I don't feel very connected to the bike,
Yeah.
especially with Vespa. Uh, you don't actually have that many points of anchor. It's your butt, your feet, and your hands. Versus like if you're on a motorbike, you have the tank between your legs. You can kind of grip it with your knees, and there are more points that make you and the bike an integral, like one unit that is moving down the road. So I'm finding with the Vespa, I usually feel a little perchier. And so having a seat that is with an Airhawk and a sheepskin is just so oddly like you're floating on top of your bike. It's very weird. Very comfortable.
Yeah. Do you ever mess with suspension?
Definitely weird.
Does that like?
I should, but I'm really low budget, so I haven't spent money
if
on
you have
good
done
suspension.
75,000 miles without suspension changes, that says a lot. That says a lot for the stock suspension. So.
Yeah, it's not bad. But I do have friends who really they upgraded their suspension first thing, so that's a nice thing if you're going to spend money on it.
Use a windshield.
Yes, definitely. At least a short windshield to take the wind off of my chest. But I don't like to look through the windshield, so it's just a little shorty sport windshield. And for all of my bikes, that's usually the first thing I'll put on there for ergonomic reasons. Except the P. I don't like the P with the windshield.
Every bike I've tried that had windshields, because I'm so tall, always just ended up being a funnel to have wind right in my face.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I wish for one day I could experience what a nice windshield is like, but no, not yet.
Tall people problems.
Yeah, I shouldn't be riding scooters, right? So you're saying windshield, a good seat.
Yep, windshield, a good seat. Those make a big difference. I like to use a cruise assist. Have you heard of a cramp buster?
Paddles? No.
Yeah. It's a little paddle you put on your throttle, and it means that instead of gripping your throttle and then twisting, you can now rest your palm to hold your throttle open. And if you just need to eat up the miles, then that's a no-brainer. The thing costs like $8, and it will save your hand. So yeah, if you just need to like make it go for miles and miles, and you're not doing a lot of like, I leave it on in the city too because I'm lazy. But
what would you say was the worst thing that happened during your trips? Like, when did your bike let you down? Did it ever? Do you have a flat? Or?
I don't know if it really let me down.
That's high praise.
I mean, I'm not super keen on riding in Atlanta again because I've never had any, not accidents, but collisions, except in Atlanta, where I was hit twice. So Atlanta drivers, while very polite, are not watching out for bikes.
We were in Atlanta 2 weeks ago, and there was a lack of scooters or motorcycles in general.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
Because they're all dead. No, just kidding. They're not. And the drivers are always so sorry. They're so polite because this is the deep south, and it's just like, I'm so sorry I didn't see you there while you're like bleeding out on the pavement or whatever. But um, I think if my bike has let me down, it's not really the bike. It's user error. It tends to be user error. So the bike has been remarkably reliable. It's kind of like a BMW, maybe.
Everyone buy a GTS250. I try it.
Yeah, they've been making the GTS for over 10 years now, I think. They've been making it forever with only minor changes.
It's crazy. It is. I think that's the one. The Piaggio's doing it right. It's going to be the one bike that's become a classic again, just the way it looks, because they're not changing anything about it. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I rode one once on a ride in Cincinnati, and my buddy had a drink holder, and
Yes.
and he's short. I'm not. I couldn't ride it. I had to like put my knee past the drink holder, and I would bump into everything all the time.
Oh wow! I think you would need a different seat.
Yeah, that was a big problem. Because it forces the double position. It forces you into one single position, and you can't really move around.
I don't like that split seat for the GTS either. And I'm not very tall, but the split seat puts me too far forward. Like it's annoying. But anyway, yeah. I mean, the GTS is like, after riding other bikes over winter, whenever I can, because I've ridden the GTS so much. At this point, it's like, do I have a chance to try something else? Yes, I'd love to ride this. Whenever I get back on my bike, it does feel a bit like riding a couch. It's not. I don't know. It's a very comfortable ride, but I don't find it to be very aggressive, or I don't know how to put it. It's just like, it's like riding a couch, like steering this kind of like boat of a scooter down the street. And there are a lot of people that like touring on the GTS probably because of that. Yeah. It's just comfortable and easy.
I was looking through some of your comics. Do you still do those?
No, I was doing one drawing for every day that I was on the road when I first set out, just because I wanted to capture the feeling of slow travel, and I was inspired by, I think Mo Willems has a book where when he took a year off to backpack around the world, and he did one drawing every day, again to try and capture that slower travel feeling. Ironically, when I first set off, I actually went really fast compared to how I would ride now. Yeah. I was motoring along, and it was hard to keep up, to do one drawing for every day. I did slow down quite a bit, and in total, I think there are 400 some drawings. There's over 400 drawings for every day on the road for the first, it would be a year. Until I got back to Lubeck. So once I hit the fourth corner, I think I was just too tired to draw one for every day. And at that point, I'd slowed down. So there are some days that, like, if I'm working, if I need to hand in book work, there's nothing to draw for that day. First of all, I've spent the entire day drawing, so I really don't want to draw anymore. But second, it's just like, well, now I guess I'll draw me drawing, because that's all I did today.
Yeah, it's hard to be creative, right?
Yeah, I'm not actually a creative person at all. That's why I like go out and ride, and I'm like, okay, I'll go out and do a thing, and then I'll just like draw it, so I don't have to come up with it myself.
Well, this was fun. That sounded very bad. This was fun. I'm looking at the notes just to see if there's something I want to touch up again. You really made me interested in the Wandering Wasp. I'll see if I can contact her.
Yeah.
And get her on
Yeah,
here.
Definitely.
That would be fun. I mean, I have the uttermost respect. Like going on a trip in Pakistan and all that stuff is amazing.
Yeah. Oh, and she did it all solo too, and like learned to work on her bike.
Yeah.
Which I guess I also learned to work on my bike. Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to plug to our viewers that you want to share? I mean, I put your website in here. Let me know.
Nothing in particular. I did just move my blog to my own server, so you can find my blog at 250superhero.com. And updates have been a little lax last year. I didn't get to do that much last year, but because I am planning to get to Europe in August, I'm planning to post more and have more activity on my blog.
There you go. I hid your face and put the blog up there.
Okay. Good. Nobody wants to see my face.
It's been quiet around here, but change is in the air.
Yeah.
How can people support you if they want to?
I do have a Patreon, and I think I have a donate button.
Oh, cool.
Or you can just come out and say hi. I love meeting people, and like sometimes that's just how I would plan a route. Is like, oh, I heard that so and so is here. Maybe I can go and say hi to them.
Oh, so this is the point where you give out your full address and your phone number and stuff?
Well, I don't have an address because it's just my bike.
Cool. Well,
But I usually, I usually post a schedule or a rough schedule on my blog, so you can follow me there.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming on. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me.
If you're listening, go follow Stephanie on Instagram
and
on 250superhero.com.
Yay.
From my side, don't forget to come to AmeriVespa. Just come to AmeriVespa. I don't know. I'm going to be there. We're going to be selling t-shirts, which is going to be cool. So you can pick up a t-shirt from that scooter thing. Have you thought about making t-shirts? You should make t-shirts.
Oh, I don't know where I would keep them.
True.
Because you need different sizes. You might have a unisex cut. I don't know where to keep them, and I don't have a way to ship them out.
Everyone always asks, "Do you have shirts?" And I'm like, "Do you know how much work that is?"
Yeah, but now you have shirts.
Now I have shirts. I just bit the bullet. Whatever. They'll be at Bandcamp.
So now people can get shirts. Yeah.
They'll be at Bandcamp. They'll be at AmeriVespa. So if you want to pick one up, come find me there. We'll have a vendor stand. We'll have a little stand where we show off some of our bikes that we built that are not that special, but they'll be there. Thank you, Stephanie, for coming on. Don't forget to comment.
Thank you again.
Don't forget to comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.